The greatest integer function is a step function with a constant step length and a constant step height. In this video, I'll explain how to find the rule of a greatest integer function from its graph, as well as from a table of values. When you have to solve a problem, it's much easier to find the equation of the function if it's graphed on a Cartesian plane. Here's the first example. We want to find the rule of this greatest integer function. The standard form for this type of function is f of x equals a times the greatest integer of b times x minus h in brackets plus k. Step 1. Replace h and k with the coordinates of a solid point. Here, there is a solid point at the origin, so h and k can be replaced with 0, 0. This gives f of x equals a multiplied by the greatest integer of b times x. Step 2. Find the absolute value of a. The value of parameter a is the vertical distance between two steps, or the step height. Since heights are always positive, we take the absolute value of parameter a. Here, the step height is 3, so the absolute value of parameter a is 3. Step 3. Calculate the absolute value of parameter b. We know that the length of a step is 1, and that it corresponds to the absolute value of b. Here, the step length is 2, so the absolute value of b equals 1 over 2. Step 4. Determine the sign of parameter b. If the direction of the steps from left to right go from a solid point to an empty point, parameter b is positive. On the other hand, if the direction of the steps go from an empty point to a solid point from left to right, parameter b is negative. A negative b value creates a vertical reflection, which has the effect of reversing the direction of the steps. Here, the steps go from a solid point to an empty point, so parameter b is positive. Step 5. Determine the sign of parameter a. If the function is increasing, then parameter a and b have the same sign. If the function is decreasing, then a and b have opposite signs. The variation of a greatest integer function can be found by multiplying a by b. If the product is positive, the function is increasing. If it's negative, the function is decreasing. Here, the function is decreasing, so a and b have opposite signs. Since b is positive, a must be negative. Now we have everything we need to write the rule for this greatest integer function. We can replace a with -3 and b with 1/2. The rule of this function is f of x equals -3 multiplied by the greatest integer of 1/2 x. Here's a second example. We want to find the rule of this greatest integer function. Step 1. Find the coordinates of a solid point and replace h and k with this point's coordinates. We can use the solid point 1 and 4 or any other solid point. Here we'll replace h with 1 and k with 4. Step 2. Find the absolute value of parameter a, which is the step height. Here, the distance between 4 and 12 is 8, so the absolute value of a is 8. Step 3. Calculate the absolute value of parameter b. Here, the length of a step is 1/2. Since the absolute value of b equals 1 over the step length, we get 1 over 1/2. The absolute value of b equals 2. Step 4. Determine the sign of parameter b. Since the direction of the steps goes from an empty point to a solid point, b is negative, so b equals -2. Step 5. Determine the sign of parameter a. Since the function is increasing, a and b have the same sign. Since b is negative, a is also negative, so a equals -8. Therefore, the rule of this function is f of x equals -8 multiplied by the greatest integer of -2 times x minus 1 in brackets plus 4. Here's a final example to illustrate what to do when a table of values is given. Draw the graph corresponding to this table of values, or use just the table of values to find the rule. Here we'll do both methods at the same time. On the Cartesian plane, the x-axis is scaled by intervals of 5 and the y-axis by intervals of 1. Next, a solid point can be placed at -5, 1. This point corresponds to the coordinates of h and k. We get f of x equals a multiplied by the greatest integer of b times x plus 5 in brackets plus 1. To find the absolute value of parameter a, we need to find the height between two steps. In the table of values, this height is represented by the distance between the y values of 2 points on consecutive steps. In this case, the distance is 1. For the absolute value of b, we need the length of one step. In the table of values, the step length is the difference between two numbers in square brackets. Here, this difference is 5, so the absolute value of b is 1/5. Since the interval brackets go from included to excluded, the direction of the steps goes from a solid point to an empty point, so b is positive. Since the function is increasing, a and b have the same sign. Since b is positive, a is also positive. The rule for this function is f of x equals 1 multiplied by the greatest integer of 1/5 times x plus 5 in brackets plus 1. That's it. I hope you liked this video and it helped you understand how to find the rule of a greatest integer function.